My name is Emma, I'm 32 years old, and my parents tried to force my golden child brother's wedding into my home after disowning me 8 years ago. Before I tell you how that ended with their wedding in ruins and a massive lawsuit, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The phone vibrated against the table, a jarring buzz in my quiet design studio. I glanced at the screen, and my heart did a painful little flip. It said Mom. 8 years. 8 years of absolute silence, and now this. I let it go to voicemail, my hand trembling slightly. A minute later, a text popped up. Emma, I know you're there. Pick up. It's about Jason. With a deep breath, I called back. There was no warmth in her voice, no how have you been? It was straight to business. Jason, my older brother, the golden child, was getting married. And, she announced, they had decided my beautiful hillside home would be the perfect venue. They weren't asking. They were telling me. And in that moment, I realized, to them, I wasn't their daughter. I was just property. That cold, transactional tone pulled me right back to when I was 18, standing in our old living room. On the coffee table were 2 letters. One was an acceptance to my dream art school. The other, to the law school my father had chosen for me. I remember his words when I told him I was choosing art. He didn't yell. It was worse. He just looked at me with this chilling disappointment and said, "This house doesn't support fantasy." They had a pattern of this, of course. Just a few years before that, they'd strong-armed me into giving up a summer art scholarship to take an unpaid internship at a friend's law firm. They always knew how to make me feel small, like my dreams were frivolous. So I left. I put myself through school, worked 3 jobs, and poured every ounce of pain and anger into my work. Now, my design studio was successful. This house, the one they wanted to use as a prop, wasn't just wood and glass to me. It was my sanctuary. It was proof that I had built a life, a beautiful life, without them. I met my best friend Georgia for coffee the next day, my head still spinning. "Are you kidding me?" she said, nearly spitting out her latte. "They have some nerve." Her outrage was the validation I needed. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I hadn't decided yet, but the whole thing felt off. Why now? Why my house? While I was talking, Georgia was furiously typing on her phone. She said, her voice suddenly serious. "You need to see this." She turned her phone around. It was a Society page article. Jason Miller to wed Isabel DeVos. DeVos. As in, the DeVos industrial fortune. The article was gushing, talking about the union of 2 of the city's most traditional families. And there it was. The puzzle piece clicked into place. My parents were financially struggling, I knew that much. They needed to project an image of old money success for their new, incredibly wealthy in-laws. It wasn't about family. It was a business transaction, and my home was their stage. That night, I called them back. My voice was steady, colder than I thought possible. "The answer is no," I said. "My house is not available." There was a short silence, then I heard my father's humorless chuckle on the other end. "Don't be dramatic, Emma," he said, his voice laced with that old, familiar condescension. "The invitations are already sent. 200 people. We'll see you on September 15th. You wouldn't dare turn away an entire wedding party in person." He hung up. Just like that. The threat was clear. They were going to ambush me. A few days later, the real attack came. It was an email, forwarded from Georgia with the subject line, "You are not going to believe this." It was from a high-end event planning company, confirming the details for the Miller DeVos wedding. My address was listed as the venue. And attached was an invoice for $45,000. My stomach dropped. As I was staring at the screen, a notification popped up from my bank. A fraud alert. A charge for $5,000 from that same event company had just been processed. The payment method? A supplementary credit card from my father's account, one he'd given me in high school and that I was sure I had destroyed years ago. He must have reactivated it. That's when something inside me snapped. The hurt and sadness I'd felt for years crystallized into something hard and sharp. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was fraud. This was theft. I picked up my phone and called Georgia. "I don't need a lawyer, G," I said, my voice low. "I need a shark." That night, I couldn't sleep. For a fleeting, cowardly moment, I found myself scrolling through real estate websites in other states. I could just sell the house. Disappear. Start over where they couldn't find me. The thought was tempting. It was the easy way out. The next morning, I told Georgia about it. She looked at me over her mug and said, "You can sell the house, Em. But you can't sell the memory. If you run now, they will always have this power over you." She was right. Running wasn't a solution, it was a surrender. George's uncle was a retired judge, and while he couldn't represent me, he gave me the name of a lawyer. "She's a bulldog," he'd said. He wasn't kidding. Ms. Albright was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who listened to my story without a flicker of sentimentality. "To build a case for fraud," she said, her voice crisp, "I need everything. Every financial document you have that ever connected you to your parents." That night, I dug out an old, dusty box from the back of my closet. It was filled with old report cards, photos, and a thin folder of financial papers. And in it, I found something I'd forgotten about. A statement from my godmother Eleanor's estate. She had left me $200,000 when she passed away right after I'd left for college. At the time, my parents had told me the money was tied up in a complicated trust that wouldn't mature for years. Looking at the documents now, something felt wrong. I scanned them and sent them to Ms. Albright. Her reply came an hour later, at 11 p.m. The email was short. "Emma, we need to talk first thing in the morning. This is much bigger than a fraudulent credit card charge." September 15th arrived. It was a perfect, sunny autumn day. But instead of white ribbons and rose petals, my property was adorned with something else entirely. It was the day of the Rainbow Coalition's annual donor gala, a private, ticketed charity event I had arranged to host. The guest list was a who's who of the city's most progressive philanthropists and media figures. At exactly 4 p.m., a fleet of black cars rolled up my driveway. My parents, Jason, and the DeVos family emerged, dressed in couture, their faces beaming with smug satisfaction. They saw the valet parking, the string quartet playing softly on the lawn, and they assumed it was all for them. Her mother gave a little squeal of delight. "Oh, Emma, you came through. I knew you would." Then her eyes fell on the small, elegant rainbow flags placed in the table centerpieces. Her smile faltered. "What is this?" she hissed. Jason's face went white. He saw a few prominent LGBTQ+ activists he recognized from the news, laughing and sipping champagne. He saw his fiancée's father, the notoriously conservative Mr. DeVos, staring at the scene, his jaw tightening. That's when I walked out onto the porch, Ms. Albright by my side. My voice was calm, clear, and carried across the lawn. "Good afternoon," I said. "I believe you're at the wrong address." I held up a thick, legally binding contract. "This property is leased for a private charity gala. You're trespassing." For a moment, there was just stunned silence. Then Isabel, the bride-to-be, shrieked, "This is my wedding." She lunged for a table centerpiece, trying to rip the flag out, and in the process, sent a tray of champagne glasses crashing to the ground. A camera from a society reporter flashed, capturing her twisted, furious face perfectly. Mr. DeVos didn't say a word. He simply grabbed his daughter's arm, his face like a thundercloud, and marched his family back to their cars, giving Jason one last, withering look of pure disgust. As my family's cars beat a hasty, humiliated retreat down my driveway, a man in a neat suit stepped out from behind a large oak tree. He walked calmly to my father's car and slapped a thick packet of documents onto the windshield. It was the lawsuit. They had been officially served. The cars sped away. That evening, as the gala wound down, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Isabel. The wedding is off. I hope you're happy. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt quiet. For the first time in my life, I felt the quiet of true peace. I deleted the message without replying. Later, Georgia and I sat on my porch, listening to the distant music. "You did it," she whispered, her eyes shining. "It's over." And I knew she was right. It was finally, truly over. For months later, I was in Ms. Albright's sleek downtown office. The viral photo of Isabel's meltdown, combined with the ironclad evidence of financial fraud and the theft of my inheritance, meant my family didn't have a leg to stand on. They folded immediately to avoid a public trial. "They agreed to all our terms," Ms. Albright said, sliding a document across the desk. "Full restitution of the $200,000 with interest. A formal, public apology printed in the city's newspaper. And, most importantly, a permanent restraining order. They could never contact me again." The victory felt good, but something was still missing. The money felt tainted. I couldn't keep it. So I used it to create something new. I called it the Phoenix Scholarship. Last week, I hosted the first workshop for the scholarship's recipients in my studio. It was filled with young, brilliant artists, all of whom had stories of being told their dreams were foolish. I found myself talking to a young painter, a girl who reminded me so much of myself at 18. She was hesitating, afraid to make a bold stroke on her canvas. I put a hand on her shoulder. "Don't be afraid," I told her. "This is your story. You get to tell it however you want. Make it loud." My family tried to use my home as a stage for their lies. But in the end, it became the foundation for something real, something true. Standing there in my sun-drenched garden, watching these young artists laugh and create, I finally understood. My victory wasn't just about winning a lawsuit or getting my money back. It was about turning the ugliest chapter of my life into a source of light for others. And that is a kind of peace that no one can ever take from me again. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I hope it helps someone out there who feels like their voice is being silenced. My question for you is, have you ever had to stand up to your family to protect your own peace? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more. It really does help. Thank you.